Sometimes grief leaves a man with nothing but a dry mouth, an empty saddle, and the one creature that refuses to quit on him. For Bill Thompson, that companion was a scar-faced German shepherd named Roger. After the funeral, the only thing Bill inherited was a cave the probate papers called Valueless, a dark hole in the Bitterroot Rock that nobody wanted and everybody whispered about. He went there for silence. Roger went nose down for answers. Behind a fallen slab and a veil of cold air, they uncovered a hidden passage, a brass key wedged in stone, and a weather-cracked journal that hinted at a family who vanished and a debt that never stopped knocking. What began as a man trying to outrun his sorrow turned into a trail of markings, artifacts, and a truth the town had buried for decades. Would this cave finally set Bill free, or drag him somewhere he couldn't come back from? Before we head in, tell me where you're tuning in from. And if this kind of dusty mystery grips you, hit subscribe, because tomorrow I've set aside something extra special just for you. The sun hung low in the sky, its golden rays spilling over the jagged peaks of the Bitterroot Mountains, painting the towering pines in warm hues of amber and gold. The scent of damp earth and pine resin filled the air, mingling with the crisp chill of early autumn. Bill Thompson rode into the logging camp with a weariness that settled heavy in his bones. It had been a long haul from the last town, a winding trail littered with memories of better days and ghosts of what could have been. Bill was a practical man, a cowboy through and through, his weathered face a map of hard-earned wisdom. The brim of his hat cast a shadow over his sharp blue eyes, and the lines etched into his forehead told tales of loss and resilience. His companion, Roger, a German shepherd with a coat as dark as a raven's wing, trotted close by, ears pricked and senses alert. Bill had taken to calling him his good luck charm, though truth be told, it was Roger's instincts that kept them both safe in a world riddled with trouble. As they rode into the clearing, the camp came into view, a haphazard collection of log cabins, sawdust-laden ground, and the distant sound of axes biting into wood. Smoke curled from a central fire where rough-looking men gathered, sharing tales of the day's work. Bill tipped his hat to them, but his mind was elsewhere, drawn to the dark mouth of a cave that loomed at the edge of the clearing like a gaping wound in the earth. It had been left untouched, a relic of a time long past, whispered about in hushed tones, but never ventured near. "Just a cave, Roger," he muttered, though even he could feel a strange pull in the air, as if the cave itself was beckoning him closer. Roger seemed to sense it too, his body tense, tail stiff, standing at the ready. The dog moved cautiously, as if sensing a disturbance in the very fabric of the world around them. Bill dismounted, dusting off his chaps. "Let's get ourselves a look, boy," he said, gesturing toward the cave. There was no sense in ignoring it, not when it loomed so large in his mind. He had inherited this place from his late uncle, and though it had seemed valueless upon first glance, something deep inside him stirred with the possibility that perhaps it held more than what met the eye. The pair approached the entrance, where shadows pooled like ink. Bill felt a chill crawl up his spine, an unwelcome shiver that hinted at secrets best left buried. He squinted into the dimness, trying to make sense of the darkness that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The air grew thick, pregnant with anticipation. "You smell that, Roger?" he asked, even though he knew the answer. The dog was on high alert, sniffing the ground and the air, ears twitching as if he were hearing something just beyond the threshold of understanding. With a heavy heart, Bill took a step closer, boots crunching on the gravel. "Ain't nothing but shadows in there, I reckon," he said, trying to convince himself more than his canine companion. But Roger growled low in his throat, the sound a warning, a note of unease that echoed in the silence. It was a sound that sent a jolt through Bill, urging him to reconsider. As he hesitated, a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, rattling the branches overhead and swirling leaves like a dervish. The cave seemed to exhale, and for a fleeting moment, Bill could have sworn he saw a flicker of movement deep within the shadows, a fleeting glimpse of something not quite right, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand tall. "All right, let's get on with it," he murmured, his voice steadying as he reached for the lantern hanging from his saddle. He flicked the flint, igniting a small flame that cast trembling light against the cavern's mouth. "Stay close, Roger. We ain't alone in here." With a slow, deliberate motion, he stepped inside, the lantern's glow illuminating the rough-hewn walls that seemed to close in around him. Roger followed, his instincts guiding him as he kept pace, eyes scanning every crevice. The cave was more extensive than Bill had anticipated, the air cool and still, filled with an earthy aroma that clung to the damp stone. As they ventured deeper, the flickering light danced across the walls, revealing ancient etchings that told stories of a bygone era, symbols he couldn't decipher but felt oddly drawn to. "What in tarnation?" Bill murmured, tracing a hand over one particular carving that appeared to shimmer in the lantern's glow. And then it happened. A creaking sound, almost like a whisper, echoed through the cavern, and the heavy wooden door at the far end of the cave swung open with a slow, eerie creak, as if inviting them in. Bill's heart raced, a mixture of intrigue and apprehension flooding his senses. "Well, I'll be," he breathed, glancing at Roger, whose eyes were wide, tail now tucked low. The door stood ajar, darkness spilling forth as if it had its own life, beckoning him to step beyond the threshold. Bill hesitated, a rush of questions swirling in his mind. What lay behind that door? What secrets had his uncle kept, and why had he chosen to leave this place to him? With a deep breath, Bill took a step closer, the light from his lantern flickering ominously, as if it too felt the weight of the unknown. The air thickened with anticipation, and he could feel Roger's body tense beside him, the dog's instincts warning him of something beyond mere curiosity. Together they stood on the brink of mystery, and for the first time in a long while, Bill felt the stirrings of something more than just practicalities. He felt the pull of adventure, of danger, and perhaps even of the supernatural. "Whatever it is, we're in this together," he said quietly, not quite believing his own words as he reached for the door, the chill of the cave's breath brushing against his skin. Bill's hand trembled slightly as he pushed against the door, its surface rough and splintered beneath his fingers. The wood groaned in protest, a sound that reverberated through the cavern, mingling with the distant drip of water from unseen stalactites. He held his breath, bracing himself for whatever lay beyond. Roger remained at his side, muscles taut, eyes reflecting the lantern's light like two small moons in the gathering dark. With a gentle shove, the door creaked open wider, revealing a narrow passage that twisted and turned like a serpent. The air inside felt cooler still, almost electric, as though it pulsed with an energy all its own. Bill stepped inside, his boots crunching on gravel, Roger close behind, his nose twitching as he caught a whiff of something unfamiliar. "Keep your wits about you, boy," Bill whispered, though he couldn't tell if he was reassuring Roger or himself. As they entered the passage, the flickering lantern cast eerie shadows that danced along the walls, revealing more carvings, more symbols, strange figures intertwined with depictions of the land above, of horses, cattle, and men. Each carving seemed to tell a story, but one particular etching caught Bill's eye. It depicted a figure cloaked in mystery, face obscured, holding a lantern of its own, much like his. "What in the name of Sam Hill?" Bill murmured, kneeling to inspect the carving closer. He ran his fingers along the grooves, feeling an odd warmth radiating from the stone, almost as if the figure were alive. Roger sniffed at the ground, then let out a low whine, a sound that sent a shiver down Bill's spine. "Something's not right here," he said, glancing down the passageway where shadows loomed larger, more ominous. "We best be cautious, partner." Adult, they continued, following the passage as it wound deeper into the earth. The lantern's light flickered, casting long, wavering beams that seemed to dart ahead, revealing glimpses of the unknown. As they walked, the air grew thick with a musty scent, tinged with something metallic that set Bill's nerves on edge. He paused to listen, every creak and groan of the cave amplifying the tension in the air. A sound echoed from further down, a faint clattering like a distant tumbleweed caught in a gust. "Did you hear that, Roger?" Bill asked, his voice low. Roger's ears perked up and he moved ahead, nose to the ground, scanning for any signs of life or danger. Bill followed closely, the lantern illuminating the path ahead. As they rounded a bend, the passage opened up into a vast chamber. The sight before them stole the breath from Bill's lungs. Crystals protruded from the walls, sparkling like 1,000 stars caught in a web of stone. In the center of the chamber lay a shallow pool, its water so still it appeared like glass, reflecting the light from the lantern in a kaleidoscope of colors. Bill felt a pull, a sense of wonder that made his heart race. "Whoa, would you look at that?" he breathed, stepping closer. The surface of the water shimmered with an otherworldly glow, and as he leaned over to peer into its depths, he caught sight of something glimmering beneath the surface. "There's something down there." Roger sniffed the air, then gave a low growl, his instincts kicking in again. Bill straightened, feeling a sense of unease wash over him. "What's got you all riled up, boy?" he asked, but Roger was already moving back, nose quivering as he pawed at the ground. "Maybe we ought to head back," Bill suggested, though a part of him was drawn to the mystery below. Just as he turned, the air around them shifted, a sudden chill seeping into the chamber as if the cave itself were breathing in sharply. The lantern flickered wildly, casting strange shadows that seemed to dance along the walls, and for a brief moment, Bill thought he saw the cloaked figure from the carving standing beside the pool. His heart pounded like a runaway stallion. "Did you see that?" he stammered, glancing around. But Roger had already backed up against the wall, ears flat against his head, eyes wide with fear. Bill steadied himself, forcing his breathing to slow. "Come on now, it's just the light playing tricks," he muttered, though he wasn't so sure himself. He approached the pool again, the surface shimmering as if it were alive. "Just a few more moments," he told Roger. He leaned closer, peering into the depths, and that's when he saw it. An object, half buried in the sediment, gleaming like a lost treasure. It was round and metallic, unlike anything he had seen before. Bill felt a strange compulsion to reach for it, a sense that it might hold the answers to all his questions. Before he could think twice, he plunged his hand into the water, the coldness shocking him. As he grasped the object, a jolt of energy shot through him, and the world around him swirled. The lantern flickered once more, casting a blinding light that illuminated the chamber, revealing the cloaked figure in full form, standing at the edge of the pool, eyes glinting with a knowing light. Bill's heart raced as he stumbled back, the object slipping from his fingers and sinking into the depths. "What in tarnation?" he gasped, staring wide-eyed at the apparition that seemed both a part of the cave and something else entirely. Roger barked, breaking the spell. But it was too late. The figure melted into the shadows, leaving behind an eerie silence that filled the chamber like a heavy fog. "Time to skedaddle, Roger," Bill said, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned, the lantern's light now feeling fragile, the shadows creeping in with an insistent hunger. As they retreated down the passage, Bill could feel the weight of the cave pressing in around him, a reminder that some secrets were best left undisturbed. Yet the mystery lingered, tantalizingly close, just beyond reach. Bill moved quickly, his heart hammering against his ribs as he retraced his steps down the narrow passageway, the flickering lantern casting long shadows that danced menacingly behind him. Roger stayed close at his heels, the dog's instincts sharp and alert, ears perked and nostrils flaring. There was an unmistakable tension in the air, a feeling that the cave itself was alive and watching. "Easy now, boy," Bill murmured, though he couldn't help but feel a tremor of fear ripple through him. "We ain't in any ordinary place." He reached up to wipe the sweat from his brow, the musty air heavy with anticipation. The deeper they delved, the more he felt the weight of the earth above them, as if it were an ancient beast, ready to stir from its slumber. As they turned another bend, the passage narrowed further, jagged rock walls closing in around them. Bill took a moment to steady himself, his fingers brushing the rough surface, feeling the coolness beneath the grit. "There's got to be more to this cave than just pretty crystals," he muttered, glancing down at Roger, who was sniffing curiously at a patch of damp earth. The dog suddenly growled softly, the hairs on his back standing on end. Bill crouched down beside him, studying the ground. "What have you found, partner?" He noticed a series of footprints, shallow but distinct, leading away from the pool. They were too small for a man's boot, perhaps a child's or something else entirely. A chill ran down his spine. Darn if that don't give me the heebie-jeebies. He followed the prince, heart racing, every instinct screaming at him to turn back, but his curiosity was a stubborn beast. The footprints led deeper into the cave, winding like a snake through the shadows. Roger remained vigilant, sniffing the air, keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings. The cave opened into another chamber, this one smaller but adorned with strange carvings on the walls, figures resembling the cloaked apparition he had seen earlier. They depicted scenes of what looked like an ancient tribe, performing rituals, holding hands around a large stone. The air thickened, and Bill felt a pull toward the carvings, a strange familiarity that gnawed at the edges of his memory. "Look at this, Roger," Bill said, pointing to a carving that depicted a figure with a staff, surrounded by swirling patterns that seemed to come alive under the lantern light. "I reckon this here might be telling a story." He took a step closer, feeling the cool stone under his fingertips. The moment he touched it, a jolt shot through him, not unlike the one he'd felt when he reached into the pool. His breath caught in his throat as the carving shimmered momentarily, revealing ghostly outlines of the figures within them. Bill stumbled back, eyes wide. "What in tarnation is happening here?" he gasped. Roger barked, snapping him back to reality. "Come on, let's move," he urged, glancing back at the eerie spectacle, feeling an urgency to escape the weight of the past pressing down on him. Yet a part of him yearned to stay, to uncover the mysteries of the cave that seemed intertwined with his own life in ways he couldn't yet fathom. As they turned to leave, Bill caught sight of something glinting among the rubble in the corner of the chamber. "What's that?" He stepped closer, the lantern illuminating a small, weathered box no bigger than his hand. It was adorned with intricate designs, similar to those on the walls, and appeared to be locked. "Well, I'll be," he muttered, crouching down to examine it. "If it ain't a treasure, I don't know what is." He pulled out his pocket knife, the blade glinting under the light, and carefully pried at the hinges. The box creaked open, and a plume of dust swirled into the air, tickling his nose. Bill coughed, waving his hand in front of his face. Inside lay a collection of small trinkets, stones, feathers, and a weathered piece of parchment. Bill lifted the parchment gingerly, his fingers tracing the faded script. The letters were unlike anything he had seen, flowing like water, yet there was a sense of urgency in the way they were scrawled. He glanced at Roger, who had taken a step back, as if sensing the weight of the object. "What do you think, boy? Should we take a closer look?" Bill asked, his heart racing with excitement. But as he spoke, the cave rumbled faintly, a deep growl echoing through the chambers, sending shivers down his spine. The lantern flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced along the walls, and the air thickened once more, heavy with foreboding. "Let's hightail it out of here," he said decisively, tucking the box under his arm. He turned to retrace his steps, but as they made their way back, the growl intensified, reverberating through the cave like thunder. The walls seemed to close in around them, and for a moment, Bill felt an overwhelming sense of being watched, as if the very stones held eyes. "Keep close, Roger," he urged, his voice steady despite the rising dread. They rushed through the narrow passage, Bill's heart pounding in rhythm with the echoing growl. The shadows lengthened, reaching out like tendrils, clawing at their heels as they pressed onward. "Almost there," he panted, glancing back to see Roger, eyes wide and alert, as they neared the last bend leading to the exit. Just as they rounded the corner, the growl morphed into a bone-chilling howl that sent a fresh wave of terror coursing through Bill. "Run, Roger!" he shouted, breaking into a sprint, his boots thudding against the rocky ground. The lantern swung wildly, the light flickering as if it too were frightened. Bill didn't dare look back, the instinct to flee overtaking him as the darkness loomed ever closer. With one final push, they burst into the open air, the bright sunlight nearly blinding after the suffocating darkness of the cave. Bill stumbled out, falling to his knees, gasping for breath. Roger stood beside him, panting, eyes darting back toward the mouth of the cave, alert and watchful. "Did you hear that?" Bill asked, though he already knew the answer. The howl echoed faintly behind them, a reminder that whatever dwelled within the cave was not finished with them yet. He clutched the box tightly, its weight a promise of answers, and with a determined nod to Roger, he rose to his feet. "We'll figure this out, partner, one way or another." The mystery was only beginning, and Bill could feel the echoes of the past calling to him, each whisper urging him to uncover the truth hidden within the shadows of the cave. Bill took a moment to steady himself, feeling the sun warm his face while the cool breeze rustled through the sagebrush around him. The open expanse of the high desert was a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness of the cave he had just escaped. Yet, the thrill of discovery coursed through him like a shot of whiskey, invigorating him despite the fear still lingering in his gut. "Let's head back to camp, Roger," he said, his voice firm, though he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The dog, ears perked and tail stiff, gave a soft bark, as if in agreement. Bill felt a swell of gratitude for his loyal companion. Roger was more than just a dog. He was a partner in every sense, a sentinel with instincts honed by years spent roaming the frontier. As they made their way back to their camp, nestled a few miles from the mouth of the cave, the landscape stretched out before them like an open book, each crevice and rise telling its own story. The wind whispered secrets through the grass, and the distant mountains loomed like sentinels, their shadows shifting as the sun dipped lower in the sky. Bill's mind raced, running through the possibilities of what he'd found. The box felt like a puzzle, its contents begging to be understood. "Maybe we ought to set up a fire," he muttered, glancing at Roger. "We'll need light if we're going to take a closer look at that box." The dog responded with a wag of his tail, ever keen to be part of the plan. Back at their camp, Bill stoked the fire until it roared to life, its flames licking at the cool evening air. He settled on a log, the box resting in his lap like a newfound treasure. The lantern flickered softly, casting a warm glow that danced with the shadows around them. Roger lay close, watching the flickering light as if it held some magical power. "All right, let's see what secrets you're hiding," Bill said, his voice low, almost reverent. He eased the box open, its hinges creaking in protest. The dust still swirled in the air, shimmering in the firelight like tiny stars. He picked up the parchment first, carefully unfolding it to avoid tearing the fragile paper. The script was a tangle of loops and swirls, but as he focused, he began to discern words that seemed to pulsate with energy. "In the shadows of the past, the truth shall find you," he read aloud, furrowing his brow. "What in the world does that mean?" He glanced at Roger, who was now on high alert, ears perked and eyes fixed at the tree line. "You sense something, boy?" Bill asked, setting the parchment down. Roger's low growl echoed softly in the stillness, a warning that sent chills creeping up Bill's spine. "Come on now, it's just us," he reassured, but his voice faltered. The crackling of the fire filled the air, but it was soon overshadowed by the sound of rustling nearby. Bill's heart raced. "What in tarnation?" Just then, the shadows deepened, and he felt a shiver race down his spine. "Keep your eyes peeled, Roger," he whispered, reaching for the lantern and raising it higher. The light flickered, revealing nothing but the swaying sagebrush. Then, as if the darkness itself had conspired against him, Bill caught sight of a figure, a ghostly outline lurking at the edge of the clearing. It flickered like a mirage, wavering between the tangible and the ethereal, just beyond the fire's reach. "Who's there?" Bill called out, his voice steady despite the dread pooling in his gut. The figure didn't move, but he could sense it watching him, a presence that felt both ancient and sorrowful. Roger barked, a warning that echoed into the silence. The figure seemed to shift, and in that moment, the faint outline of a woman emerged, her long hair flowing like mist, her features both familiar and foreign. Bill's breath caught in his throat. "Martha," he breathed, the name slipping out before he could hold it back. The apparition nodded slowly, her expression a blend of longing and sadness. "Bill," she spoke, her voice soft yet resonating in the cool evening air. "You must listen." "Is it really you?" Bill stammered, his heart racing. "I thought I lost you to that storm." "Not lost, but bound," she replied, her gaze piercing through him. "The cave holds the key to understanding what lies between our worlds. You found the box. It's tied to me, to us." Bill's mind spun, the parchment's words echoing in his thoughts. "But why? What's this all about?" "You must uncover the truth of the past to break the chains that bind me," she said, her form beginning to flicker, as if the firelight was threatening to extinguish her. "The cave is a bridge, Bill, a bridge to the past and a passage to redemption." "Martha!" he shouted, reaching out instinctively, but she began to fade, the shadows swallowing her presence. "Don't go! Find the stones," she whispered, her voice growing distant, "and the truth shall set you free." And then she was gone, leaving Bill staring into the empty space where she had stood. The night felt heavier now, the air thick with unspoken words and secrets long buried. Roger whined softly, nuzzling against Bill's leg, grounding him in reality. "What just happened?" Bill murmured, his hands trembling as he glanced down at the box, then to the parchment, where new meaning rippled through the faded letters. He had been thrust into a mystery far greater than he had imagined, and with it came a sense of purpose. "All right, partner," he said, determination flickering to life within him like the fire before him. "We've got work to do." As the stars twinkled overhead like 1,000 watchful eyes, Bill set his jaw, resolved to delve deeper into the secrets of the cave. The truth lay waiting in the shadows, and he wouldn't rest until he uncovered it, no matter what the cost. The fire crackled softly, its warmth a small comfort against the eerie chill that had settled in since Martha's apparition vanished. Bill felt a weight pressing down on him, an urgency clawing at his insides as he peered into the darkness beyond the flickering light. The cypress trees swayed gently, whispering secrets he couldn't quite decipher, but he knew one thing: he had to get to that cave. "Come on, Roger," he said, gathering his wits and stuffing the parchment back into the box. The dog stood at attention, his ears perked and eyes scanning the perimeter. Bill felt a swell of gratitude for the loyal canine, whose instinct for danger was sharper than a rattlesnake's fangs. "Let's see what the cave has to tell us." With the lantern in one hand and the box tucked under his arm, Bill made his way to the mouth of the cave, the earth crunching beneath his boots like old bones. The path was uneven, littered with rocks and gnarled roots, but he knew this land well. His feet moved with purpose, guided by the very essence of the wild frontier that surrounded him. As they approached the cave, a heavy silence enveloped them, thick as molasses. The entrance loomed dark and foreboding, like a gaping maw waiting to swallow him whole. "You stay close now, Roger," he murmured, feeling the dog's warm presence at his side. The lantern's light flickered wildly against the cave's jagged walls, revealing glistening minerals embedded in the rock, glimmers of what might have been treasures long forgotten. Bill stepped inside, the cool air wrapping around him like a damp blanket. He could feel the heartbeat of the earth in the cave's silence, a pulse that resonated through the stone. "What do you reckon we'll find in here, boy?" he asked, though the answer was as elusive as the shadows that danced along the cave walls. Roger sniffed the ground, his nose working overtime, and then paused, his ears swiveling. He let out a soft whine, and Bill felt a jolt of apprehension. "What is it, partner?" he asked, scanning the cave's interior. Suddenly a sound echoed, a faint trickle of water like distant laughter reverberating off the walls. Curiosity piqued. Bill followed the sound deeper into the cave, his heart thumping like a runaway mule. The lantern's light flickered uncertainly, creating a play of shadows that twisted and turned, as if mocking him. He adjusted his grip on the lantern, his eyes straining against the darkness, but Roger remained vigilant, leading the way with a keen sense of purpose. As they ventured further, the air grew cooler, and Bill could make out faint etchings on the walls, symbols and shapes that felt ancient and alive. He paused to run his fingers over one of the markings, a swirl that seemed to pulse under his touch. "What's this?" he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. Roger pressed against his leg, and Bill could feel the dog's unease. "I reckon we're onto something," he said, trying to reassure them both, though a knot of fear tightened in his stomach. The cave's quietness was no longer comforting. It was laden with an unspoken tension, as if the very stones were holding their breath. Suddenly, the sound of dripping water echoed louder, drawing him toward a narrow passageway veiled by a curtain of vines and moss. Bill pulled aside the greenery, revealing a small chamber beyond. The lantern's glow illuminated the walls, and his breath hitched. Here the symbols were more defined, swirling into patterns that resembled constellations, yet they were unlike any he had ever seen. "What do you think, Roger?" Bill asked, stepping into the chamber. The dog sniffed the air, then turned his head toward the far wall, his eyes widening as if he could sense something profound. Bill followed his gaze, and there, nestled against the stone, lay a pile of stones, smooth and glistening as if they had been polished by the hands of time. "They must be the stones Martha spoke of," he murmured, kneeling to examine them. Each stone had a different hue, some deep as the night sky, others shimmering like sunlight on water. He reached out to touch one. The moment his fingers brushed its surface, sending a jolt of energy coursing through him. It felt alive, warm against his skin. "Easy there, boy," he said to Roger, who was now barking softly, a low rumble that echoed in the chamber. Bill looked up to see the dog's body tense, eyes locked on a shadow creeping across the far wall. The lantern flickered again, and in that instant, Bill's heart raced, the air thickening with tension. "Show yourself," he called, feeling his voice tremble slightly, the bravado slipping away. The shadow shifted, coalescing into a figure that was all too familiar. The ethereal outline of Martha appeared once more, her features sharper than before, a gentle smile curving her lips. "Bill," she said, her voice echoing in the confined space, "you found them. The stones are the key. What do I do with them?" he asked, breathless with a mixture of hope and fear. Roger growled low, protective as always, but Martha's gaze held a calming energy. "Place them in the order of the stars," she instructed, her voice weaving through the air like a soft breeze. "The truth will reveal itself, and the path to freedom will be laid bare." Just then, the cave trembled slightly, the ground vibrating underfoot, as if the earth itself was responding to her words. The shadows flared, and Bill felt a sudden rush of wind sweep through the chamber, extinguishing the lantern's light, plunging them into darkness. "Roger!" he shouted, gripping the dog's collar tightly. In the pitch black, Bill could hear the sound of something shifting, an echoing whisper filling the air. The weight of the world pressed in around him, and he could sense that whatever lay before him was about to change everything. He took a deep breath, the fear coiling in his stomach, and prepared to follow the path that Martha had laid before him, ready to uncover the truth that had been hidden for far too long. The darkness pressed in around Bill like a heavy blanket, his heart racing in sync with the whispers that spiraled through the cave, filling the void with an otherworldly hum. He could feel Roger's presence, the dog's warm body close, his breathing steady as he remained alert, muscles taut and ready to leap into action. "Stay close, boy," Bill murmured, his voice low and steady, although doubt clawed at the edges of his mind. With a cautious hand, he reached into his pocket for the small flint he always carried. In the wilds, a man had to be prepared for anything, and now was no exception. He struck the flint against a rock, hoping to coax a spark to life. But the darkness was relentless. The cave held its secrets tight, swallowing the light before it could take form. Come on," he muttered, frustration mounting as the flint sparked once, twice, before finally igniting the tinder he had stowed away. The flame flickered uncertainly, casting dancing shadows that played tricks on his eyes. Just as he secured the small flame, Roger darted forward, his ears perked, nose to the ground, barking sharply. "Easy, Roger! What is it, boy?" Bill called out, following the dog's lead. The beast was onto something, he could tell, darting back and forth, his instincts sharper than any man's. Bill moved carefully through the darkness, the small flame illuminating only a few feet ahead. As he stepped deeper into the chamber, he could feel the cool dampness of the cave seep into his bones, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and stone. Roger suddenly froze, his body tense, eyes fixed on a narrow crevice in the wall. "What have you found?" Bill whispered, moving closer. The dog's growl softened into a low whine as he sniffed the air, tail held high, signaling something unusual. Bill knelt beside him, peering into the crevice where shadows clung like cobwebs. "By the stars, what is that?" he murmured, as he reached into the darkness, his fingers brushing against something smooth and cool. Pulling it free, he held it up to the dim light, revealing a small, intricately carved talisman. It was a heart-shaped stone, but it was the markings that caught his breath, twisting lines and shapes that matched the etchings on the walls, almost as if the stone was a part of the very cave itself. "What do you reckon, Roger?" Bill asked, turning the talisman over in his hand. The moment he touched it, a shiver traveled up his arm, a whisper of the past trickling into his mind. Memories of Martha flooded his thoughts, her laughter mingling with the echoes of the cave. Could this be a part of what she meant? He pondered aloud, excitement and uncertainty battling within him. Suddenly, a chill swept through the chamber, rattling the stones and whispering secrets in a language he could not comprehend. Roger barked, his fur bristling as he backed away, and Bill felt the hairs on his neck stand on end. "What in tarnation?" he breathed, the talisman growing warmer in his palm. "Show yourself!" Bill commanded, trying to summon courage even as the shadows twisted and swirled. The whispers intensified, a chorus of voices rising and falling like the wind through the prairie grass. "I ain't afraid of you," he declared, though inside doubt gnawed at him. Then, as if in response to his challenge, the air shifted. The cave itself seemed to awaken, vibrations pulsing through the floor as if it had a heartbeat. The lantern's flicker returned, casting a stronger glow, revealing more of the chamber's secrets. The symbols on the walls seemed to shimmer with life, and Bill could swear they were rearranging themselves, forming new shapes and figures that danced before his eyes. "Bill," came Martha's voice again, clearer now, a soothing balm against the chaos. "You are close. Trust in the stones. They carry the truth of this land, of our family. Place the talisman amongst them, and the path shall reveal itself." His heart pounding, Bill glanced at Roger, who was now sitting attentively, ears pricked. "You heard her, didn't you, boy?" Bill murmured, gathering his resolve. He stepped toward the pile of stones, each one radiating a warmth that was both inviting and daunting. Kneeling before them, he carefully placed the talisman atop the shimmering stones, feeling a rush of energy flood through him as he did. The moment it settled, the cave shook with a low growl, and the symbols around them burst to life, glowing brighter than the sun. Bill's breath caught in his throat, awe mingling with fear as the chamber transformed, revealing images of the stars, the earth, and the spirits that had wandered this land before him. They swirled together, telling tales of love, loss, and the deep connection between man and nature. Roger whimpered, stepping closer, the shadows retreating in the light of the revelation. "This is it," Bill whispered, a thrill of understanding igniting within him. "This is the truth she spoke of." With every breath, he felt the weight of the past pressing in, urging him to delve deeper into the mystery before him. The cave held not just stones, but the legacy of his family, an inheritance that stretched far beyond the physical realm. "Now we're getting somewhere," he said, determination settling in his chest. The path was clear, and together with Roger, he was ready to uncover the secrets that lay waiting within the heart of the cave, where the past met the present in a dance as old as time itself. The cave pulsed with a newfound energy, as if the stones themselves were alive, sharing secrets long buried beneath layers of dust and time. Bill, still kneeling before the luminous stones, felt a connection that transcended the mortal coil, threading him to the spirits that lingered in the darkness. He took a deep breath, the earthy scent of damp stone filling his lungs, and turned to Roger, whose intelligent eyes gleamed with an understanding that seemed to mirror his own. "All right, boy," Bill said, his voice steadier now, emboldened by the light illuminating their path. "Let's see what else we can dig up." He stood, brushing the dust from his knees, and scanned the chamber. The flickering lantern cast a warm glow on the walls, revealing more intricate carvings that had escaped his notice before. Each symbol felt like a heartbeat, thrumming with the pulse of history. Roger sniffed the air, his ears perked up, signaling that something still lay hidden. "What do you sense, fella?" Bill asked, moving deeper into the cave, where shadows wavered like restless spirits. The air grew cooler as he ventured further, the talisman still warm in his pocket, a reassuring weight against his thigh. Carefully, Bill approached a wall where the carvings became denser, more chaotic. He could make out shapes that resembled animals, deer, eagles, and a serpent coiling around a tree. "Looks like a map," he muttered, tracing a finger along the intricate designs. "Or maybe a story." Roger, ever vigilant, gave a low growl, pulling Bill's attention back. The dog stood at the base of a stone formation that jutted out like a sentinel, his nose pressed against a crack in the rock. "What have you got there?" Bill asked, moving closer. The crack seemed to shimmer, mirroring the light from the lantern, and Bill knelt beside it. With a firm grasp, he pried the stone apart, his heart racing with anticipation. The crack opened up wider, revealing a small hollow. Bill reached in and pulled out a handful of dirt and stones, but beneath them lay something unexpected, a rusted metal box, barely discernible under the layers of time. "Now, ain't you a sight?" he exclaimed, brushing off the grime. The box was adorned with engravings, similar to those on the walls, twisting vines and celestial symbols woven together in an intricate tapestry. "What do you reckon is inside, Roger?" The dog whined softly, leaning closer as if sensing the significance of the find. Bill felt a surge of excitement and trepidation wash over him. "Let's see what secrets you hold," he said, fumbling with the latch, which creaked open with a reluctant groan. Inside, the box contained an array of items, each one carefully wrapped in what appeared to be worn leather. Bill pulled out the first object, a compass, its needle spinning wildly before finally settling down, pointing toward the entrance of the cave. "Well, that's peculiar," he muttered, unsure whether to take it as a sign or a warning. Next, he uncovered a weathered journal, the leather cracked and pages yellowed with age. "Now we're talking," he said, excitement bubbling up inside him. He opened it gingerly, revealing sketches of landscapes and notes scrawled in a hurried hand. The writing spoke of a hidden treasure, a sacred site where the spirits of the land could be contacted, words that resonated deeply with the visions he had witnessed moments before. "Listen to this, Roger," he read aloud. "Follow the star that shines brightest in the night sky, for it will lead you to the heart of the cave where the waters weep and the earth speaks." He looked up, meeting Roger's gaze. "The heart of the cave. We've got to find it." As he continued to flip through the journal, the room began to hum with a soft vibration, as if the cave itself was alive and listening. Bill felt the weight of history pressing in on him, a silent audience to his discovery. "This is a part of our family, Roger," he said, his voice low but filled with reverence. "A piece of Martha's legacy. We can't let it slip through our fingers." He tucked the journal carefully back into the box, but before he could replace it, Roger barked sharply, snapping Bill's attention back to the darkness beyond. The growl in the dog's throat deepened, a primal sound that echoed through the chamber, causing the hairs on Bill's neck to rise. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, his heart racing. The shadows seemed to swell, a tangible presence shifting just beyond the reach of the lantern's glow. Roger advanced a few steps, his stance low and wary, every muscle in his body coiled and ready. Then, a figure began to materialize from the depths of the cave, a shimmering silhouette that flickered like a flame. Bill's breath hitched in his throat. "Who goes there?" he called out, his voice steady, though doubt gnawed at the edges of his courage. "Martha," the word escaped his lips, a whisper that echoed in the stillness. The figure paused, swirling like smoke, and for an instant he thought he saw her face, the warmth of her smile wrapped in the ethereal glow of the cave. "Is that really you?" But before the figure could respond, the shadows rushed forward, swirling around him and Roger, engulfing them in a rush of cool air that felt like the breath of the ancients. Bill clutched the journal and the talisman, instinctively shielding Roger with his body. "Stay close, boy," he urged, heart hammering, as he prepared for whatever revelation awaited them in the depths of the cave, knowing they were on the precipice of something that could change everything. With resolve, he stepped forward, ready to face the unknown, trusting in the bond of his faithful dog and the legacy that bound him to this sacred land. The journey into the heart of the cave was just beginning, and the answers he sought were waiting in the shadows. Bill's pulse quickened, the darkness swirling around him like a thick fog. He tightened his grip on the journal, feeling the rough leather beneath his fingertips, grounding him amidst the uncertainty. Roger stood beside him, muscles tense, ears perked, ready to spring into action. "Whatever's coming, we'll face it together," Bill murmured, steeling his resolve. He took a cautious step forward, peering deeper into the shadows that danced just beyond the flickering light of the lantern. The air felt thick and electric, as if the cave itself was charged with some ancient energy, whispering secrets that only the brave dared to hear. As he moved, he noticed peculiar symbols etched into the stone walls, patterns that matched the engravings on the metal box. They seemed to shift and shimmer, alive under the soft glow of the lantern. "Look at that, Roger," Bill said, pointing at a particular symbol that resembled a star intertwined with a serpent. "Might be what the journal was talking about." He squinted, trying to decipher its meaning. "Could be a path, or maybe a warning. We ought to be real careful from here on out." Roger sniffed at the ground, then raised his nose, catching a faint scent that piqued his curiosity. With a low growl, he nudged Bill's leg, urging him to follow the trail deeper into the cave. Bill felt a surge of trust in his loyal companion, who seemed to possess a wisdom that transcended the ordinary. "You got a nose for trouble, don't you, boy?" He chuckled nervously, taking another step forward. As they ventured deeper, the cave narrowed, the walls slick with moisture, glistening like polished stone under the lantern's light. The soft drip of water echoed in the distance, a rhythmic reminder that they were not alone in this ancient place. Bill's heart thudded in time with each drop, a reminder of the living pulse of the earth around him. "Gotta be the waters weepin'," he said, recalling the words from the journal. "We're near something important, Roger." The anticipation crackled in the air, mingling with the earthy scent of damp stone and moss. Roger paused, ears twitching, as a shiver of energy passed through the cave. Bill halted, his senses heightened, and he scanned the surroundings. The shadows began to swirl again, and he felt a tug at the edge of his consciousness. "What's happening here?" he whispered to himself, the weight of the moment settling heavily on his shoulders. Suddenly, a soft voice echoed through the cavern, ethereal yet familiar. "Bill, my dear Bill." The sound wrapped around him like a warm embrace, and he turned, half expecting to see Martha's shimmering figure again. But the shadows danced, playing tricks on his eyes. "Martha!" he called, his voice steady despite the tremor of hope and fear intertwining in his chest. "Seek the light, Bill. Follow the brightest star," the voice whispered, fading into the depths of the cave, leaving behind a lingering warmth that seeped into his bones. "Did you hear that, Roger?" he asked, his heart racing. The dog nodded, as if to affirm the presence that had just spoken. "Ain't no time to stand around. We gotta find that light." With renewed determination, Bill pressed forward, his instincts guiding him as he followed the gentle sound of water flowing. The lantern illuminated the path ahead, revealing more symbols that seemed to guide him, each one speaking of forgotten stories, of promises made long ago. As they turned a corner, the cave opened up into a grand chamber, the walls adorned with glistening crystals that caught the lantern's light, scattering it like stars across the night sky. In the center of the chamber, a small pool shimmered, its surface still and reflective, like a mirror to another world. "Would you look at that?" Bill breathed, awestruck by the beauty. "This must be it." He approached the water's edge, the air thick with an otherworldly energy. He could see his reflection, but there was something more. Images flickered across the surface, visions of his past intertwined with the spirit of the land. "Bill," the voice echoed again, urging him to lean closer. "You must understand." Roger, ever watchful, stood at his side, bristling at the strange energy swirling around them. Bill knelt, his heart pounding in his chest as he gazed into the water. "What do you want me to see?" he whispered, the words barely escaping his lips. Suddenly, the surface of the pool rippled, and a vision emerged. He saw a family, his family, gathered around a fire, laughter ringing out like music in the night. Then the scene shifted, a dark shadow looming over them, a figure cloaked in despair. "No!" Bill gasped, his heart sinking. "What does this mean?" "Protect what is sacred," the voice echoed, resonating deep within him. "Guard the legacy, or lose it all." Bill's breath hitched as he realized the weight of the warning. This cave, this treasure, it wasn't just about gold or riches. It was about preserving the spirit of his ancestors, the land they loved. The thought sent a chill racing down his spine. Roger whined softly, nudging Bill's arm as if urging him to rise. "You're right, boy," Bill said, shaken but resolute. "We can't let the darkness take hold. We gotta find a way to protect this place." He stood, determination flooding his veins as he turned back to the pool. "I'll do whatever it takes, Martha. I promise you that." As if in response, The air around them shimmered, and the symbols on the walls pulsed with light. Bill felt the weight of his ancestors behind him, their spirits guiding him as they prepared for the challenges ahead. With Roger at his side, he was ready to uncover the mysteries of the cave, to face the darkness that threatened his family's legacy and the land they called home. The heart of the cave thudded like a drum, urging him forward into the unknown, where answers awaited wrapped in the shadows of the past. The air was thick with anticipation as Bill took a step back from the shimmering pool, his eyes never leaving the reflections that danced across its surface. A shiver crawled up his spine as he tried to make sense of the vision. A family, a fire, and then that ominous shadow. He had seen too much hardship in his life to take such warnings lightly. "Come on, Roger," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper as he turned to examine the chamber further. The lantern's light flickered, casting long shadows that stretched and twisted like ghosts, clinging to the edges of his vision. He could feel the cave's energy, pulsating with secrets, and it seemed to beckon him deeper into its embrace. Roger, ever vigilant, sniffed the ground as they ventured further into the chamber. The dog's instincts had saved Bill more than once, and he trusted that sharp nose to lead them to whatever lay hidden in this place of echoes. "Keep your eyes peeled, partner," Bill said, kneeling to inspect the stone floor, which was strewn with small pebbles and shards of crystal. "If there's something here, we're bound to find it." As Bill sifted through the stones, he stumbled upon something peculiar, a thin, metal object half buried beneath the rubble. He pulled it free, revealing a tarnished compass, its glass cracked but still intact. The needle quivered, spinning erratically before settling, pointing resolutely towards the far end of the chamber where a jagged rock formation loomed. "Would you look at that?" he breathed, turning the compass over in his palm. "Seems to me this old thing knows something we don't." He glanced at Roger, whose ears were perked up, the dog's eyes fixed on the darkened recesses of the cave. "Looks like it's leading us somewhere." Together they moved toward the rocky outcropping, the air growing cooler and more charged with energy. The walls here were rougher, marked with ancient carvings that seemed to whisper secrets of the past. Bill traced his fingers along the grooves, feeling the weight of history beneath his touch. The stories etched into the stone spoke of guardians, protectors of the land, preserving balance against the encroaching darkness. Roger's low growl broke the silence, causing Bill to pause. The dog's instincts were sharp as a knife, and he could sense something amiss. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, his heart racing. He squinted into the shadows, trying to discern what had set his faithful companion on edge. Suddenly, a soft rustling echoed from behind the rock formation, like the whisper of a breeze through dry grass. Bill's breath caught in his throat. "Hello?" he called, his voice steady yet tinged with uncertainty. "Is anyone there?" The rustling stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that stretched across the chamber. Bill exchanged a glance with Roger, who remained alert, muscles tense and ready. "Guess we'll have to check it out," he muttered, edging closer to the formation. With a quick motion, he shoved aside a few loose stones, revealing a narrow passageway that had been hidden from view. "Looks like this is our way forward," he said, feeling a thrill of excitement mixed with trepidation. "Let's see what we can find." He took a deep breath, steeling himself against the unknown, and ducked into the passage, with Roger trailing close behind. The tunnel was dark, the walls slick with moisture that glistened in the light of the lantern. Bill walked cautiously, every step echoing softly, as if the cave itself was holding its breath. The air grew colder, and he felt the weight of unseen eyes upon him, a reminder of the spirits that roamed these depths. As they progressed, the passage opened into another chamber, this one smaller, but filled with the remnants of a long-forgotten fire pit. Scattered around were the charred remains of wood and animal bones, all covered in a thick layer of dust, indicating that no one had disturbed this place for years. Bill knelt to inspect the site, his fingers brushing against the ground, and he felt an unexpected warmth radiating from the center. "Now, what do we have here?" he murmured, pulling out a small leather pouch that had been buried beneath the ash. It was worn and cracked, but as he opened it, the light of the lantern revealed a handful of sparkling stones, each one glimmering with a light of its own. "Crystals," he breathed, marveling at their beauty. But these ain't just any crystals. Roger sniffed the pouch, his tail wagging slightly, as if he too felt the significance of the discovery. I reckon these might hold more than just pretty colors, Bill said, pocketing a few of the stones. Could be they're part of whatever this cave is trying to tell us. Suddenly, the soft voice of Martha echoed once more, filling the chamber with warmth. You are drawing closer, Bill. The truth lies within the heart of this place. Trust your instincts, for they will guide you. Bill's heart raced at the sound of her voice, and he felt a swell of courage rising within him. I hear you, Martha, he replied, the words spilling out before he could think. I'll do right by our family, I promise. With Roger by his side, Bill resolved to uncover the mysteries of the cave. The crystals pulsed with energy, and he could feel the weight of his ancestors urging him forward, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. He steeled himself, knowing that the path to protecting his legacy was fraught with peril, yet he felt a kinship with the land that would see him through. The lantern flickered as if in agreement, casting a hopeful light into the shadows, guiding him deeper into the heart of the cave and the secrets that awaited him there. Bill felt a spark of determination igniting within him as he stood in the chamber, surrounded by the echoes of the past. The lantern's flickering light danced across the walls, illuminating the faded carvings that hinted at tales long forgotten. He shifted his gaze from the fire pit to the stones he'd just uncovered, wondering what power they might hold. Looks like it's time to do some investigating, Roger, he said, his voice steady as he brushed the dust from his trousers. The dog, ever watchful, shifted beside him, ears perked and nostrils flaring as if he too could sense the mysteries woven into the fabric of the cave. With careful movements, Bill began to examine the chamber further. He noticed markings along the stone walls, more intricate than the ones he had seen before. They depicted figures with outstretched arms, encircled by swirling patterns that resembled the wind. This here tells a story, I reckon, Bill muttered, tracing a finger along the lines. Could be a warning or maybe a guide. Roger huffed softly, prompting Bill to turn his attention to the dog. The animal was fixated on a spot in the shadows, his posture tense. What do you see, boy? Bill asked, his heart rate quickening. Following Roger's gaze, he squinted into the dimness, struggling to discern what lay beyond the reach of the lantern's glow. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the cave, making the ground beneath them tremble slightly. Bill's stomach churned at the sound, and Roger's growl deepened, resonating like a distant thunderstorm. Steady now, Bill said, his voice barely above a whisper. Could be the mountain giving us a warning. As the rumbling subsided, Bill's curiosity surged. He recalled his father's tales of caves that had hidden treasures, but also dangers that could swallow a man whole. We best be cautious, he advised, tightening his grip on the lantern. No telling what lurks in the shadows. Bill moved further into the chamber, and Roger followed closely, his tail tucked low, signaling the dog's wariness. At the far end, Bill spotted a narrow crevice leading deeper into the mountain's heart. Well, ain't that something, he said, peering into the darkness. Looks like the adventure ain't done yet. Before stepping closer, he paused to inspect the ground around him. The soil was disturbed, as if something heavy had passed through recently. What do you make of that, Roger? He asked, kneeling to examine the tracks. They were unlike any he had seen before, too large for a bear, but leaving no claw marks. Could be we ain't the only ones poking around this cave. Roger sniffed the ground, his nose working overtime, then looked up at Bill with a flicker of concern in his eyes. You're right, Bill replied, a shiver running down his spine. We should be on our toes. Let's see what this crevice has in store for us. With a firm resolve, Bill edged into the narrow passage, squeezing through the tight space with Roger just behind him. The air grew colder, and the walls seemed to close in, the darkness wrapping around them like a heavy cloak. A few moments passed before the passage opened into another chamber, this one significantly larger, with a high ceiling that sparkled like the night sky. By the stars, Bill breathed, taking in the sight. The walls were adorned with crystals that jutted out from the stone like jagged teeth, catching the light from his lantern and reflecting it in a kaleidoscope of colors. The floor was littered with more of the stones he had found earlier, their glimmering surfaces beckoning to him like old friends. Roger sniffed the air cautiously, his instincts honed to a razor's edge. Bill stepped forward, entranced by the beauty surrounding him, but his gaze fell upon a darkened corner of the room where the crystals thinned out. "What's hiding over there?" he wondered aloud, feeling an inexplicable pull towards the shadows. "Let's go take a gander," he said, edging closer, his heart thumping like a wild stallion. As he approached, he noticed a large stone slab set into the wall, marked with the same intricate carvings he had seen before. A deep groove ran along its surface, suggesting it could be moved. "Could be this is some kind of door," Bill mused, examining it closely. "I reckon it's been sealed for a long time." He ran his fingers along the edge, feeling the coolness of the stone, and glanced back at Roger, whose gaze darted back and forth, sensing the gravity of the moment. "What do you think, boy? Should we give it a push?" With a deep breath, Bill planted his feet firmly and pressed against the stone. It resisted for a heartbeat before shifting slightly, revealing a narrow gap. An ancient breeze wafted through, sending a shiver down his spine. He glanced at Roger, who remained steadfast, ready for whatever lay beyond. "Here we go," Bill murmured, nudging the slab open just wide enough for them to slip through. As they entered the new space, the lantern illuminated an expanse that took his breath away. The cavern opened up to reveal a hidden grotto, filled with the sound of water trickling softly over stones. In the center of the grotto stood an altar, carved from a single slab of granite, upon which lay an assortment of objects. More crystals, rough-hewn talismans, and what looked like ancient tools. Bill stepped closer, a sense of awe washing over him. "This must be what the stories were talking about," he whispered, his heart racing. "A place of power." Suddenly a bright flash caught his eye, and he turned to see a figure standing at the edge of the grotto, cloaked in shadows. "Bill," the voice echoed, familiar and haunting, "you've come to fulfill your destiny." Bill's heart leapt into his throat. "Martha," he gasped, recognizing the voice of his beloved wife. "Is that really you?" The figure stepped forward, revealing a face both ethereal and warm, shimmering like the crystals surrounding them. "You are not alone, Bill. The guardians of this land are with you." Roger barked, alert and protective, but Bill felt a calmness wash over him as the figure beckoned him closer. "Come, Bill. The truth you seek lies within your heart." With a blend of fear and exhilaration, Bill stepped forward, knowing that the journey was just beginning. The cave, once a place of despair, had transformed into a realm of possibilities, and he was ready to embrace the legacy that awaited him. Bill stood entranced by the figure before him, a ghostly apparition that shimmered with an otherworldly glow. "Martha," he whispered again, half doubting his senses, half hoping for a miracle. The sorrow of her passing had left a gaping hole in his heart, and now here she was, draped in the light of forgotten stars, beckoning him toward the unknown. "Bill," she said softly, her voice echoing like the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. "You have inherited more than a mere cave. This is a sacred place, a bridge between our world and the spirits that guide us." Her eyes, bright and penetrating, held a depth that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom. Bill shook his head as if trying to clear the fog of disbelief. "What do you mean, a bridge? I reckon this is just an old hole in the ground filled with pretty rocks." Martha's ethereal smile widened, the crystals around them reflecting the glow of her presence. "Not just rocks, Bill. These crystals are imbued with the essence of the land. They hold memories, stories, powers long forgotten. You must uncover their secrets to find peace." Roger, sensing the weight of the moment, moved closer to Bill, his hackles raised. The dog's instinct warned him that something was amiss, and he kept his nose low to the ground, sniffing for any sign of danger that might lurk in the shadows. "Come, boy," Bill murmured to Roger, who seemed to sense the gravity of the encounter. "We need to listen to her." Bill's heart was a mix of hope and dread. The ghost of his wife had always been a force of comfort in his life, and now she was guiding him from beyond. Martha gestured toward the altar, her translucent hand gliding over the surface of the stone. "Each item you see tells a story of those who came before, and of the guardians who protect this land. You must understand them to fulfill your destiny." Bill stepped closer, his lantern casting flickering shadows against the altar. The crystals sparkled with life, their facets catching the light like stars scattered upon the ground. He picked up one of the rough-hewn talismans, a small charm carved from bone, etched with symbols he couldn't quite decipher. What in tarnation do these markings mean? Martha's smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of solemnity. They are warnings, Bill. Each symbol represents a lesson learned, a danger faced. This land has its protectors, and it is your responsibility to respect them. Protectors? Bill echoed, glancing around the grotto, suddenly aware of the stillness that enveloped them, thick as molasses. The sound of water trickling nearby was the only thing breaking the silence, and it seemed to hum with a life of its own. Yes, Martha continued, her voice steady, but they will not reveal themselves until you prove worthy. The land has watched over you, and now it is time for you to listen. She stepped back slightly, her form flickering like a flame in the wind. Bill's heart raced as he absorbed her words. What do I need to do? Find the crystal that resonates with your spirit. It will guide you to the truth. Her eyes sparkled, but a hint of concern lingered in her gaze. But beware, Bill. Not all who seek power do so for good. The darkness of the past still lingers here. Bill felt a chill creep up his spine at her words, and Roger barked lowly, his body tense. What darkness? Bill asked, scanning the shadows for any hint of the unknown. There are those who wish to exploit this power, Martha warned, her voice barely above a whisper. They will come for you if you do not protect it. Trust your instincts and keep your heart true. With that, she took a step back, the light around her beginning to dim. I'll be here, watching over you, Bill. Remember, the cave holds more than secrets. It holds your future. The last glimmer of her form faded, leaving Bill alone with Roger, who sniffed the air, tail stiff and alert. I reckon we've got ourselves quite the mystery, huh, boy? Bill said, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. Let's see if we can find this crystal she spoke of. With determination, Bill turned back to the altar, examining the various crystals laid before him. He picked up a larger one, smooth and polished, and as he held it, a warmth radiated through his fingers, sending a rush of energy up his arm. This one feels different, he muttered, his brow furrowing in concentration. Roger edged closer, sniffing the crystal and pawing at the ground. Bill felt the dog's instinct stirring an excitement he couldn't quite understand. What do you think, Roger? Does this one speak to you too? As he turned the crystal in his hand, the air around him seemed to hum with energy, and he could swear he felt the weight of eyes upon him, watching from the shadows. A soft breeze whispered through the grotto, stirring the dust motes in the lantern light. Time to listen then, he said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling in his gut. Let's see what this place has to tell. Udez, with Roger at his side, alert and ready, Bill prepared to delve deeper into the mysteries of the cave, aware that his journey had only just begun. The shadows danced around them, and the promise of adventure crackled in the air, a thin veil over the secrets of the past waiting to be unearthed. With the warmth of the crystal still coursing through his veins, Bill squinted into the dark recesses of the cave, his pulse quickening with each passing moment. The lantern's light flickered, casting long shadows that swayed like ghostly figures against the damp, uneven walls. Roger, ever vigilant, sniffed the air, his ears perked up as though he heard something Bill could not. Easy there, boy, Bill whispered, his voice barely carrying above the sound of water trickling from somewhere deeper within the cavern. He placed the crystal back on the altar, its surface shimmering with an inner light that seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. We gotta keep our wits about us. He moved cautiously, using the lantern to illuminate the ground before him. The cave floor was uneven, littered with small stones and patches of slick mud, remnants of a long-forgotten stream. Bill recalled tales of old miners who had wandered into such caves, only to find themselves lost or worse, their souls claimed by the very land they sought to exploit. He could feel the weight of those stories settle around him like a cloak. As he stepped carefully, his eyes darted to the walls, searching for markings or symbols that might echo Martha's warnings. Now, where would a fella hide a secret? He pondered aloud. The cave seemed to respond, echoing back his words, the sound dancing away into the darkness. Roger trotted ahead, his nose close to the ground, then suddenly stopped, ears pricked as he let out a low growl. What is it, boy? Bill followed the dog's line of sight, squinting into the deeper shadows. Just ahead, A series of crude carvings adorned the wall, worn and faded, but unmistakably present. Approaching the wall, Bill's heart raced. The symbols looked like those on the bone talisman he had found earlier, twisted lines and jagged shapes, some resembling animals, others more abstract. "Well, I'll be," he muttered, reaching out to brush his fingers along the carvings. "Looks like the old-timers had a thing for art." Roger's growl deepened, and Bill could feel a shiver of unease curl in his stomach. "You feeling something, partner?" He knelt down, examining a particularly large carving that depicted a mountain with a pair of eyes staring out from its peak. The eyes were drawn with an unsettling intensity, as if they watched him as closely as he watched them. Suddenly the air shifted, heavy with anticipation. Bill stood up abruptly, the hair on the back of his neck prickling. "What in the world?" The sound of rushing water grew louder, and Bill felt the cave tremble beneath his feet, a low rumble echoing through the stone. Roger barked, his fur bristling as he stood protectively in front of Bill, ready for whatever might come. "Steady now," Bill said, his voice steadied by the dog's courage. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." He scanned the cave, searching for the source of the commotion, but the lantern light only revealed shadows dancing along the edges of the rock. And then, from the corner of his eye, Bill spotted something glimmering in the darkness. A soft blue glow emanating from a narrow opening in the rock, not far from the wall he had been examining. "What have we got here?" he murmured, intrigued. He motioned for Roger to stay close and approach the opening, crouching down to peer through the narrow gap. The air felt cool against his skin, tinged with the earthy scent of wet stone. "I reckon we should take a gander," he decided, feeling a tug of excitement mixed with trepidation. As he squeezed through the opening, Roger slipped in beside him, tail wagging as he navigated the tight space. On the other side, the cave opened up into a smaller chamber, and Bill's breath caught in his throat. Before him lay a small pool of water, its surface smooth as glass, illuminated by the same soft blue glow that beckoned him closer. Around the edges of the pool, more crystals jutted from the rock, glowing with an otherworldly light that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. "By the heavens," Bill breathed, taking a cautious step forward. "This must be what Martha was talking about." Roger approached the edge of the pool, his reflection shimmering in the water, and suddenly the surface rippled. Bill's heart raced as he leaned in closer, captivated by the sight. The ripples settled, revealing images dancing across the water's surface, visions of cowboys, Native Americans, and the land itself, all intertwined in a tapestry of stories and struggles. "Seems like this place holds a memory or two," Bill murmured, entranced. He raised a hand to touch the water, and as his fingers grazed the surface, the images shifted violently, revealing a darker side. Fierce battles, storms that ravaged the land, and shadows that lurked just beyond the light. He pulled his hand back, fear washing over him. No, we don't want to awaken whatever that is." Roger barked again, but this time it was a sharp warning, a growl that sent a chill down Bill's spine. The air thickened, and the shadows around them seemed to pulse, swirling with a life of their own. The cave, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage closing in. "Let's get out of here," Bill said urgently, backing away from the pool. "We ain't ready for whatever that darkness is." But just as they turned to leave, a loud crash echoed from deeper within the cave, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. Bill's heart raced as he exchanged a glance with Roger, who stood poised, ready to defend. "We need to move, quick!" With Roger at his heels, Bill darted back through the narrow opening, the eerie glow of the crystals fading behind him. He knew the cave held more than secrets. It was a living entity with its own heartbeat, and whatever dwelled within its depths was no friend to the likes of him. As he stepped back into the main chamber, the tremors subsided, but the sense of urgency remained. He had no time to ponder the weight of the visions, nor the warnings etched in stone. His destiny lay ahead, tangled with the mysteries of the cave, and he was determined to uncover the truth before it swallowed him whole. Bill felt a twinge of dread as he hurried back through the narrow opening, the cave's ancient stones seemingly whispering secrets just beyond his grasp. Roger remained close by his side, his instincts sharp, ears pricked for any signs of danger. The cave was no longer just a hidden gem. It had transformed into a realm steeped in mystery and foreboding. As they emerged into the main chamber, Bill paused to catch his breath, the weight of what they had just witnessed pressing on his chest. The crystals still twinkled in the dim lantern light, but now they seemed to mock him, their glow taunting him with the unknown. "Well, Roger," he muttered, "if this here cave is holding secrets, I reckon we ought to dig 'em up before they dig us a grave." The dog let out a low growl, eyes fixed on the shadows that lingered at the edges of the chamber. Bill could feel the tension in the air, thick and electric, as if the cave itself was holding its breath. He knew he needed to tread carefully. This place was more than just a hole in the ground. It was a tapestry of stories woven into the very fabric of the earth. He pulled out his old leather satchel, rummaging through its contents until he found a coil of sturdy rope and a well-worn pickaxe. "Martha always said a good cowboy comes prepared," he mused, shaking his head at the irony of it all. "Now what we need is a way to poke around without stirring up whatever spirit's asleep in here." Roger nudged his leg with a wet nose, a reassuring gesture that gave Bill a spark of courage. "You're right, boy. We ain't turning tail just yet." With newfound determination, he made his way back toward the shimmering pool, the strange light drawing him like a moth to a flame. "Let's take a closer look," he said, gripping the pickaxe tightly. He approached the pool once more, the eerie glow illuminating the carved stones surrounding it. With deliberate care, he began to tap the edge of the pool with the pickaxe, listening intently for any changes in the sound that echoed back to him. The metallic clang met his ears, but it was soon drowned out by a soft murmur that seemed to rise from the depths of the water. Bill's brow furrowed. "Did you hear that, Roger?" he whispered, glancing at the dog, who was now sitting with his head tilted, ears perked. The animal was picking up on something he couldn't quite grasp. As the ripples settled, Bill noticed something peculiar about the edges of the pool. Small symbols were etched into the rock, faint but distinct. They appeared almost like hieroglyphs, winding around the base of the pool. "Now, ain't that curious?" he muttered, crouching down to examine them more closely. Roger sniffed the ground, his nose twitching as he sensed the air shifting. Bill continued to trace the symbols with his fingers, each one telling a story of its own, a language of the past waiting to be deciphered. "What do you reckon they mean, fella?" he asked. But Roger only let out a low whine, clearly sensing that something was amiss. Suddenly, the soft blue glow intensified, illuminating the symbols with a bright, ethereal light. Bill squinted, backing away as the images began to swirl in the water again, this time more vividly than before. He could see figures, both human and spectral, dancing amidst the turmoil of battle and celebration. His heart raced as the visions shifted once more, revealing a shadowy figure standing atop a hill, its face obscured, but its presence commanding. "Whoa there! This ain't no ordinary cave," he breathed, glancing nervously at Roger, who was now growling low in his throat. "Seems like it might be holding on to some mighty powerful memories." Before he could collect his thoughts, the shadows around the cave thickened, closing in like a storm. The cave rumbled again, this time louder, as if reacting to the disturbance in the water. "We best skedaddle, Roger," Bill barked, feeling the urgency swell within him. He took a step back, ready to make his escape, when he noticed a glimmer at the far side of the chamber, another narrow passageway that had been obscured by darkness. The flickering light of his lantern caught a glimpse of something metallic buried in the dirt at the entrance of the passage. It was a rusted old horseshoe, but not just any horseshoe. It bore the same strange symbols as those on the pool's edge. "Now what in tarnation is this doing here?" he wondered aloud, curiosity battling with caution. He reached for the horseshoe, brushing away the dirt to reveal the markings more clearly. The moment he touched it, a jolt of energy surged through him, and the cave trembled once more, sending a shiver through the ground. Roger barked sharply, his instincts kicking in as he darted toward the passageway, tail tucked low. "Hey, where do you think you're going, boy?" Bill called after him, a mix of fear and concern bubbling within. With a heavy heart, he made a split-second decision. "We gotta see this through," he murmured, grabbing the horseshoe and tucking it into his satchel. Then he followed Roger, stepping into the dark passageway, the promise of adventure and peril coursing through his veins. As they ventured further into the unknown, Bill could hear the whispers of the past echoing around him, the cave alive with stories yearning to be told. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't just a grieving cowboy anymore. He was a part of something greater, a tale woven through time, and he was determined to unravel its secrets before it consumed him whole. The passageway was dark and narrow, the walls slick with moisture that glimmered in the light of Bill's lantern. Each step echoed with a low thud, the sound swallowed by the damp air that seemed to pulse with ancient energy. Bill could feel the weight of the cave pressing around him, a silent witness to the secrets it held. Roger led the way, his senses alert, every hair on his back standing at attention as they moved deeper into the unknown. "Stick close now, boy," Bill murmured, his voice low and steady. The light from the lantern flickered, casting long shadows that danced along the walls like restless spirits. The air grew cooler, and Bill's breath hung in the air like wisps of smoke. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the very rocks were listening to their movements. "Let's see what we can find," he said, determination lining his voice. He had a mind to gather whatever clues this cave might offer, just as his pa had taught him about panning for gold in the rivers. Might be some treasure tucked away here after all. As they ventured further, Bill's boot kicked up a pile of dry leaves and dirt, revealing more symbols etched into the stone beneath. He knelt, brushing away the debris with his hand, his heart racing as he recognized the same carvings from the pool. "Why, it's like a whole language down here," he muttered, tracing the strange markings with his fingertips. "What are you trying to tell me?" Roger whined softly, his nose to the ground, as if he sensed a scent that Bill could not. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, glancing up. The dog stood rigid, his ears perked high, and he let out a low growl that reverberated through the stillness. Bill followed Roger's gaze, and the lantern light caught something glinting against the rocky wall. "Now ain't that odd?" he said, moving closer. There, half buried in the rock, was an old tarnished locket. He carefully pried it free, dirt crumbling away to reveal a delicate engraving of a horse rearing on its hind legs. "This is something special," he mused, opening the locket to find it empty but for a tiny folded piece of paper. With shaking hands, he unfolded the note. The ink was faded, but the words were still legible, scrawled in an elegant hand. "To the seeker of truths, beware the shadows that dance in the light. They guard what is lost, but long for what was once whole." Bill furrowed his brow, feeling a chill race down his spine. "What in the world?" he whispered, glancing back at Roger. The dog was now sniffing at another section of the wall, a low whimper escaping his throat. "You found something else, partner?" Bill approached, feeling the pulse of energy in the air intensify. He reached down, brushing aside more dirt, revealing a small stone altar that seemed oddly out of place among the rugged rock. Now, why would they build something like this in a cave? Bill wondered aloud, his mind racing with possibilities. The altar was decorated with symbols that mirrored those around the pool and the locket, a pattern too consistent to be coincidence. He could almost feel the weight of history pressing against him, urging him to unlock its secrets. Suddenly, the cave trembled slightly, dust cascading from the ceiling. Roger barked sharply, his body tense and ready to bolt. "Easy there, boy," Bill exclaimed, steadying himself against the altar. "I reckon we ain't alone down here." The air thickened, and a low hum resonated through the cave, vibrating in Bill's chest. It was as if the very earth was alive, responding to their presence. Shadows flickered in the corners of his vision, and he felt an inexplicable pull towards the altar. "Something tells me this is important," he said, kneeling beside it, his fingers tracing the intricate carvings. At that moment, the light from the lantern flickered again, casting eerie shapes on the walls. Bill squinted, and in the shifting shadows, he swore he could see figures. Faint silhouettes that danced just out of reach, their movements echoing the visions he had glimpsed in the pool. "What the hell?" he breathed, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. Roger stood guard, his growl deepening into a menacing rumble, as if daring whatever spirits haunted this place to show themselves. Bill took a deep breath, pushing aside his fear. "I ain't afraid of ghosts, not now," he declared, more to himself than to Roger. "I'm here to find answers." He straightened, the locket clutched in one hand and his lantern in the other. Let's see if we can uncover the truth behind these shadows, he said, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. With determination in his heart, he turned back to the altar, ready to delve deeper into the mysteries of the cave. Not knowing what awaited him in the darkness beyond, the air in the cave felt thick and electric, as if the very stones were charged with secrets long buried. Bill's heart raced as he scrutinized the altar, his instincts honed by years of solitude and hardship, whispering that he was on the cusp of something extraordinary. He leaned closer, studying the symbols etched into the stone, each one a riddle begging to be deciphered. The lantern's flickering light cast dancing shadows that seemed to taunt him, urging him to delve deeper. "Now, let's see," Bill murmured, rubbing his thumb over the cool surface of the altar. He could feel the grooves beneath his fingers, the weight of history pressing in around him. "You got a story to tell, don't you?" He pulled out his trusty knife, its blade glinting in the dim light, and began to scrape at the earth around the altar. It was a methodical task, one he learned from his pa, who had always said that the truth often lay buried just beneath the surface. Roger remained vigilant, his eyes darting about the cave, ears pricked as he caught every little sound. The dog sniffed the air, his instincts sharper than a rattler's fangs. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, glancing back at his companion. Roger let out a low bark, his body tense, and then trotted a few paces toward a shadowy recess in the cave wall. Curiosity piqued, Bill straightened and followed. As he drew closer, he noticed a pile of stones, oddly arranged, as if placed there with intent. "What do we have here?" he whispered, kneeling down to inspect the structure. He reached out and gingerly nudged a few stones aside, revealing a small opening behind them, just wide enough for a hand to slip through. "Looks like the folks who came before us had a knack for hiding their treasures," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "Let's see what's in there." He slipped his hand into the crevice, feeling the cool, damp air rush against his skin. His fingers brushed against something smooth and metallic, and he pulled it out with a sense of exhilaration. It was a small brass key, tarnished but unmistakably crafted with skill. "Well, I'll be," he breathed, holding it up to the lantern light. "A key to what, I wonder?" Roger sniffed at the key, his tail wagging slightly as if he sensed the importance of the find. "You think it might fit that old lock at the ranch?" Bill pondered aloud, recalling the rusted padlock that had hung on the barn door since before his father's time. "Could be worth a gander once we're out of this place." As Bill pocketed the key, a sudden rush of wind swept through the cave, extinguishing the lantern's flame for a heartbeat. Shadows enveloped them, wrapping around like a shroud. Bill's breath caught in his throat, and for a fleeting moment, he felt the presence of those who had come before, the echoes of their lives mingling with the dust of the cave. The lantern flickered back to life, but the air was charged with something he couldn't quite grasp. "Damn it! I wish I knew what you were trying to say," he muttered, shaking off the feeling. He turned back to the altar, feeling that pull once more, stronger than before. What's the next piece of this puzzle? With renewed resolve, he began to wipe the dirt away from the symbols on the altar. Each stroke revealed more of the intricate designs, and Bill could feel a rhythm in the markings, a story unfolding under his fingertips. The air hummed with energy, resonating with the history that had seeped into the stone. Roger's growl broke through his concentration, deep and resonant. Bill straightened, heart racing once again. "What is it, boy?" he asked, scanning the cave. The shadows seemed to grow bolder, twisting and flickering, and he felt a cool breeze brush against his cheek, as if someone, or something, was passing close by. Before he could react, Roger lunged forward, barking fiercely at a darkened corner of the cave. Bill followed, his pulse quickening. "Hold on now, easy does it," he called, trying to rein in the dog's instinctive bravado. As he stepped closer, the shadows coalesced into a more defined form. A glimmer caught his eye, and he realized it was a piece of polished stone, half buried in the dirt. "What have you found?" he asked Roger, kneeling down to unearth it. He brushed away the dirt, revealing a flat oval stone that shimmered with an iridescent sheen, reflecting the lantern's light in a spectrum of colors. "Now that's a sight," Bill breathed, turning the stone over in his hands. "Looks like it might be some sort of talisman." The symbols engraved along its edge matched those of the altar, creating a strange connection between the two artifacts. A low rumble echoed through the cave, a distant roar that sounded almost like thunder, but it was too close, too immediate. Bill's heart raced as he looked around, the cave seeming to tremble in response to their discovery. "We best be careful now," he murmured, clutching the stone tightly. Just then, Roger's growl shifted to a sharp bark, as if he sensed the change in the atmosphere. Bill felt a surge of urgency. "Whatever's going on, I reckon we best figure it out quickly." He turned his attention back to the altar, the talisman held firmly in one hand, the brass key heavy in his pocket. "Let's see what more this place can reveal, shall we?" he said, determination fueling his voice. The shadows danced once more, their movements quickening as if in response to his challenge, and Bill felt the thrill of the unknown drawing him deeper into the cave's embrace. Bill steadied himself, the smooth surface of the talisman cool against his palm. Shadows flickered at the edges of his vision, and the cave's damp air felt alive, charged with an energy he couldn't explain. He glanced at Roger, whose ears were perked high, eyes gleaming with alertness. The dog's instincts were sharper than any man's, and if he was on edge, then Bill knew there was more to uncover. "Come on, boy," he urged, gesturing toward the altar. "Let's see if this little beauty can help us make sense of things." He felt a strange kinship with the stone, as if it were a key to a door long left locked. Gently, he set it on the altar beside the brass key, watching as the two artifacts seemed to resonate with one another. As he leaned closer, he traced the intricate symbols carved into the altar's surface. His fingers brushed against the grooves, and a shiver raced up his spine. The designs were reminiscent of old stories his grandmother used to tell about the spirits of the land, guardians that watched over the hidden treasures of the earth. "You reckon this could be something like that, Roger?" he mused aloud, looking down at the dog. Roger wagged his tail but remained vigilant, his gaze fixed on the shadows. Bill took a step back, contemplating the altar's placement. It was in a recess of the cave, surrounded by jagged rock formations that resembled ancient sentinels watching over the secrets buried within. He glanced at the crevice where he'd found the key, then back at the altar. "Maybe there's more to this place than meets the eye," he pondered, his mind racing with possibilities. Carefully, he began to examine the walls of the cave, running his fingers over the rough stone, seeking any hidden compartments or signs that might reveal another clue. The lantern flickered, casting shadows that danced like spirits in the dark, and he felt the weight of history pressing around him. "If there's more treasure to be found, I sure hope it don't come with a ghostly price," he muttered, half to himself and half to Roger. After a few moments of searching, he spotted a faint outline on the wall, a subtle seam that suggested a door or panel had been hidden for ages. "Well, would you look at that?" he exclaimed, kneeling to inspect it closer. Dust clung to the edges, but the markings were unmistakable. This wasn't just rock, it was art, a map of sorts leading to whatever lay beyond. "Let's see if that key fits," Bill said, pulling it from his pocket once more. He felt a surge of excitement as he wiped the dust from the lock embedded in the stone. The mechanism was ancient, but as he inserted the key, it turned with an ease that surprised him. A low rumble echoed through the cave, the sound reverberating against the walls like a warning. Bill's heart raced, and he shot a glance at Roger, who stood poised and alert. "Easy now, boy," he said, trying to keep his own nerves in check. "We might be stirring up something we ain't ready for." With a final twist, the lock clicked open and the door began to shift, revealing a narrow passageway cloaked in darkness. "Looks like we found ourselves a secret," Bill said, a mix of trepidation and excitement bubbling in his chest. "What do you say we take a gander?" Roger let out a soft whine, his instincts telling him to be cautious. Bill hesitated for a moment, but the curiosity gnawing at him was too strong to resist. "Come on, partner. We ain't come this far to turn back now." He stepped into the passage, the light from the lantern barely illuminating the walls that seemed to close in around him. The air was cooler here, and as he moved deeper, he felt a tingle of anticipation. Each step echoed, a reminder that they were intruding upon a forgotten world. The passage twisted and turned, leading them to a chamber that opened wide, the ceiling soaring high above them. The walls glimmered with minerals that sparkled like stars in the night sky, and in the center of the room stood a pedestal, much like the altar they had just left behind. On the pedestal rested a small, intricately carved box, the surface etched with symbols that mirrored those of the talisman and altar. Bill approached it slowly, feeling the pull of fate urging him forward. "What do you reckon is inside?" he wondered aloud, his voice a mere whisper in the stillness. Roger sniffed at the ground, his tail stiff as he kept watch. Bill reached for the box, his fingers trembling as he lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in a bed of soft moss, lay a collection of shimmering stones, each one radiating a different hue, each one pulsing with a light that felt almost alive. "Goodness gracious," he breathed, peering closer. "This here looks like it could be worth more than gold." His heart raced at the thought of what this discovery could mean, not just for him, but for the ranch and the legacy left behind by his father. But as he reached in to touch the stones, a sudden chill swept through the chamber, and the shadows began to swirl around him, coalescing into a form that sent a jolt of fear through his veins. A figure, ethereal and translucent, emerged from the darkness, eyes glinting with an otherworldly light. "Who dares disturb the peace of the ancients?" it boomed, the voice echoing like thunder against the cave walls. Bill's heart raced and he stepped back instinctively, his mind racing as he tried to comprehend the apparition before him. "Hold your horses! I mean no harm!" he stammered, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. Roger stood firm at his side, a low growl rumbling in his throat, ready to protect his master. "Only those worthy may claim the treasures of the earth," the apparition declared, its voice resonating with the weight of time. "Oh, what do you seek, wandering soul?" Bill swallowed hard, his throat dry as dust. "I seek answers, and perhaps a way to honor those who came before me," he replied, a newfound determination settling in his chest. "My family has toiled on this land, and I reckon there's more to it than I ever understood." The spirit's gaze softened, and the shadows flickered around it. "Then you must prove your worth, young cowboy. The path you tread is fraught with trials. Will you embrace the truth that lies ahead?" Bill took a deep breath, feeling the weight of destiny upon his shoulders. "I will," he said firmly, "whatever it takes." The spirit nodded, the air around them crackling with energy. "Then prepare yourself, for the legacy of the ancients shall be revealed, and only the brave may claim their place among the stars." With that, the chamber filled with a brilliant light, the stones glowing brighter as if in response to the spirit's call. Bill stood at the threshold of an adventure he had never anticipated, heart racing, ready to face whatever lay ahead in the depths of the supernatural frontier. The light radiating from the stones bathed the chamber in hues of emerald, sapphire, and crimson, illuminating the carvings on the walls that whispered of a time long past. Bill stood frozen, heart pounding like the hooves of a galloping Mustang. He glanced at Roger, whose keen eyes darted around the chamber, tail held high, ready to spring into action should the need arise. "All right, boy," Bill murmured, keeping his voice low. "Looks like we're in for a wild ride." The spirit hovered nearby, its ethereal form shimmering as if it were part of the very air around them. Bill's curiosity wrestled with caution, but he knew he couldn't turn back now. As he stepped closer to the pedestal, he felt the warmth emanating from the stones, a stark contrast to the chill that had swept through the cave just moments ago. "What are you hiding?" he whispered, fingers trembling as they hovered above the shimmering treasures. "Beware the allure of the stones," the spirit warned, its voice weaving through the air like a gust of wind. "They carry the weight of the past, and not all that glitters is meant for mortal hands." Bill's heart sank a little, but he was not one to shy away from a challenge. "I reckon I'm ready to face whatever trials you got in store for me. Just point me in the right direction." With a wave of its translucent hand, the spirit gestured toward the far wall of the chamber, where a faint outline of a doorway could be seen, hidden in shadow. "The path lies beyond. There you will uncover the truth that binds your family to this land." He took a deep breath and stepped toward the doorway, his lantern casting flickering shadows that danced along the walls. Roger followed closely, eyes sharp as a hawk's. Bill paused at the threshold, the weight of the spirit's gaze heavy upon him. "And what if I fail?" he asked, voice steady despite the tremor in his gut. "Then you shall remain a wanderer in the dark, lost to the echoes of time," the spirit replied, its eyes piercing into his soul. "But heed my words. Trust in your heart, for it knows the way." "Guess I ain't got much choice then," Bill said, determination settling in his chest like a saddle on a weary horse. He crossed the threshold, Roger at his side, and as they stepped into the next passage, the atmosphere shifted. The air thickened with anticipation, and the walls seemed to hum, resonating with a melody only they could hear. The passageway narrowed, twisting like a snake in the grass, the darkness wrapping around them like a cloak. Bill's lantern flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. "Stay close, Roger," he whispered, feeling the urge to hold his breath. "Ain't no telling what might be lurking in the shadows." Roger's low growl echoed softly, a reminder that the faithful dog was ready to protect his master. They moved deeper into the cave, the sound of dripping water echoing like distant thunder, and with each step, the air grew colder, heavy with secrets long buried. As they turned a sharp corner, the passage opened up into another chamber. This one was even larger than the last, and its ceiling was lost in darkness, as if the stars above had forgotten to shine here. Bill's heart sank as he looked around. The walls were covered in more of those strange carvings, but these were different. They depicted figures engaged in rituals, surrounded by the same stones he had seen before. "Looks like we stumbled upon a real treasure trove of history," he muttered, stepping closer to examine the intricate designs. Roger sniffed the air, ears perked, and suddenly let out a sharp bark that echoed in the chamber. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, instinctively reaching for the rifle slung across his back. Roger darted toward a shadowy alcove, his stance tense. Bill followed, heart racing. As he approached, he noticed a faint glimmer on the ground, a piece of silver half buried in the dirt. "Could be just a hunk of junk," he said, kneeling down, but as he brushed away the soil, his breath caught in his throat. It was an old silver coin, engraved with a familiar emblem, the same one etched on the talisman and the altar. "What in tarnation?" He held it up to the lantern's light, and as the flame danced, the coin flickered with an otherworldly glow. Roger stood by, his growl fading as he watched his master with intelligent eyes. "This ain't just any coin," Bill murmured, running his thumb over the engraving. "It's got the markings of the old miners who worked this land. But why is it here?" The spirit's voice echoed in his mind. "Each clue you uncover is a thread in the tapestry of your legacy, Bill. Seek the connections and the truth shall be revealed." With renewed determination, Bill pocketed the coin and turned back to the wall of carvings. "We're onto something big, boy," he said, a grin breaking through the worry etched on his face. "But I reckon there's more to find. Let's see what else this cave is hiding." They moved further into the chamber, the shadows growing long and deep, as if the cave itself were holding its breath. Each carving seemed to whisper secrets of the past, urging him onward. Bill felt a strange bond forming, as if the land itself were calling out to him, inviting him to unravel its mysteries. "Just you and me, Roger," he said, stepping forward with a resolve that felt like the first rays of dawn breaking over the horizon. "Let's see what the ancients have to teach us." And as he ventured deeper into the darkness, the air crackled with potential, promising that whatever lay ahead would change everything he thought he knew about his family and the legacy that awaited him in the heart of the frontier. Bill stepped further into the chamber, the flickering lantern casting a warm glow against the cool stone. Each movement seemed to echo in the vast space, as if the cave itself were listening, holding its breath for what was to come. Roger remained vigilant, his nose low to the ground, occasionally lifting his head as if to catch whispers in the air. Bill could feel the tension radiating off his faithful companion. "Easy now, boy," he murmured, kneeling to examine the wall carvings more closely. The intricate designs spoke of lives long gone, stories of toil and triumph, of gatherings and rituals that transcended time. These folks sure had a way of telling their tales. Wonder what they'd think of us digging around in their old haunts. As he traced a finger over the markings, he noticed a series of symbols that seemed to repeat. They were small, almost hidden among the larger figures. Bill squinted, trying to make sense of them. These here looked like some kind of map or directions. Could it be leading us somewhere? Roger's ears perked up and he trotted over to a nearby stone, giving it a few curious sniffs before scratching at the ground. "What have you found, partner?" Bill asked, shifting his focus. He approached and crouched down to see what had captured the dog's attention. Just beneath the surface, a small, weathered pouch lay half-buried. Bill pulled it free, the leather soft yet sturdy, aged by the hands of time. "Now this is a surprise," he muttered, the thrill of discovery igniting his spirit. He opened it carefully, revealing a handful of dusty stones, each one glimmering faintly in the lantern light. "Looks like we struck gold, boy." He held one of the stones up, its surface shimmering with flecks of gold and silver. Could be some kind of mineral they used for their rituals. But what were they trying to summon or protect? Roger sniffed the stones, his eyes locked onto Bill with an understanding that spoke volumes. "You think it's connected to that spirit we saw?" Bill pondered aloud, recalling the spirit's words about legacy and truth. "Maybe these folks were trying to communicate with something beyond the grave." The atmosphere shifted, the air growing heavy with an almost palpable tension. Bill felt a shiver run down his spine. "We ought to keep moving, Roger. There's more to this than meets the eye." He pocketed the stones and turned back to the wall, tracing the carvings with renewed urgency. As they explored, the patterns began to take on a new significance. The same symbols from the pouch were echoed in the carvings, hinting at a connection he couldn't quite grasp. What if these stones are keys to unlocking something deeper, a way to understand the past? With each step, Bill felt as though he were peeling back the layers of time, inching closer to a truth that had eluded him. "Ain't no way I'm walking away from this without knowing what it all means," he declared, a fire igniting in his heart. He moved toward the far wall, where the carvings grew denser. Suddenly, Roger barked again, his stance rigid as he stood guard before a large stone slab embedded in the ground. "What's got you riled up now?" Bill asked, approaching the dog. The slab was unlike the others. Smooth and polished, with markings that glinted in the lantern light. Bill knelt beside it, wiping away dust with his hand, revealing more engravings. They appeared to be a series of concentric circles, with a symbol at the center that resembled the emblem on the coin. "A seal, maybe," he mused. "Or a trap? What in the world were they keeping hidden here?" He turned to Roger, who seemed to sense the weight of the moment, his eyes darting around as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. With a deep breath, Bill pushed against the slab, testing its give. It didn't budge. "Looks like we'll need a bit more muscle. Let's see if we can move this thing." They worked together, Bill straining against the stone, while Roger paced nearby, ever watchful. Just as he was about to give up, he felt a tremor beneath his fingers, a subtle shift that sent a jolt of excitement through him. "Hold on now!" he exclaimed, and with one final push the slab shifted, revealing a narrow opening leading further into the depths of the cave. A rush of cool air burst forth, carrying with it a faint, almost melodic whisper that sent goosebumps rippling across Bill's skin. "Now that's downright eerie," he muttered, glancing at Roger, whose fur bristled with alertness. "What do you say, boy? Should we take a gander?" Roger barked softly as if in agreement, and together they peered into the darkness beyond the opening. Bill's heart raced. This could lead to answers, or perhaps deeper mysteries yet to unfold. He took a lantern in hand, the light flickering as he stepped through the threshold, Roger at his heels, unwavering and resolute. As they moved into the narrow passage, the air thickened with a sense of anticipation, as if the cave were holding its breath once more. Shadows danced on the walls, and the whispers grew louder, wrapping around Bill like a spectral embrace. "Whatever it is, I reckon it's mighty important," he said, feeling the weight of history pressing down upon him. "We're getting closer to the truth, and I can almost taste it." The deeper they ventured, the more Bill felt the weight of destiny upon his shoulders. He was no longer just a grieving cowboy. He was a man on the brink of uncovering a legacy that could change everything he thought he knew. And with Roger at his side, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead, come what may. The narrow passageway twisted and turned, leading Bill and Roger deeper into the heart of the cave. The whispers intensified, a cacophony of half-formed words that seemed to beckon them closer. Bill's pulse quickened as they emerged into a larger chamber where the air was thick with a damp, earthy scent. The flickering lantern light illuminated the room, revealing intricate murals etched into the stone walls, depicting scenes of tribal gatherings, rituals, and a great spirit that loomed large. "Now this here is a sight to behold," Bill murmured, stepping cautiously into the room. But beneath the beauty of the artwork lay an unsettling truth, and he felt it coiling in his gut. Something didn't add up. Roger, ever the vigilant companion, darted around the chamber, sniffing the air and inspecting the corners as if he were hunting for a ghost. Bill's brow furrowed. The dog had a knack for sensing trouble, and he seemed unusually agitated now. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, scanning the room for any signs of danger. Roger's ears perked up, and he trotted over to a pile of rocks in the corner. Bill followed, his curiosity piqued. As he neared, he noticed a shimmer beneath the stones. Small, brightly colored bits of glass and metal scattered among the debris. "Could be junk, but I reckon there's more to it than that," Bill thought aloud. He began to sift through the stones, revealing a stash of old coins, rusted metal trinkets, and what looked like pieces of costume jewelry. "Well, I'll be," he exclaimed, his heart racing. "These ain't no treasures, but they sure are interesting." Roger barked, drawing Bill's attention to another part of the room where the wall met the ground. A series of small, circular holes lined the base of the chamber, almost as if they had been drilled deliberately. Bill knelt down, his brow furrowing as he inspected the holes. "What in tarnation?" he muttered, brushing away some dirt. "Looks like someone was up to no good." With a sudden surge of realization, Bill stood up straight. "These symbols, this whole setup, it's a ruse," he exclaimed, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. The spirit he had encountered, the heavy atmosphere, the strange phenomena, it all pointed to a deliberate deception. He turned to Roger, who was now sniffing the air as if he could catch the scent of the trickery. "Those folks who led me to believe there was a curse, the ghostly tales, the fear they spread, it was all to keep folks away from this cave." Bill's mind raced as he thought of the characters in town who had profited from the superstitions surrounding the cave. They wanted to keep the treasure for themselves, but why? Just then, a faint noise echoed from behind a pile of rocks on the far side of the chamber. Bill motioned for Roger to stay quiet. They crept closer, the lantern casting long shadows that danced ominously. As they neared the pile, Bill's heart thudded against his ribs. With a swift movement, he shoved aside the stones and found a small wooden door, cleverly concealed. It had been locked tight, but not for long. With a few deft maneuvers, Bill pried it open, revealing a cramped room beyond. Inside, Bill's breath caught in his throat. There were more coins, more jewels, and at the center of it all, a journal. He recognized the handwriting. It was the same as the map he had seen back at the old saloon. "This is it," he shouted, flipping through the pages. "This journal belongs to the very same folks who've been spreading these tales of curses." His eyes darted across the pages, and he began to piece together the truth. They set up this whole ghost story to scare people away from their hidden stash, using the cave's history to fuel their deception. Bill's voice grew stronger with every word. They wanted to keep their gold safe from prying eyes, and they thought they could scare anyone off who got too close. Roger barked, snapping Bill back to the present. The dog's keen senses had detected the faintest noise, footsteps approaching from the entrance of the cave. "Looks like we ain't alone after all," Bill whispered, gripping the journal tightly. "We best be ready." As the footsteps drew nearer, Bill positioned himself behind the door, a plan forming in his mind. When the shadow of a figure appeared in the doorway, he swung it wide open, startling the intruder. A familiar face, Mr. Harlan, the town's self-proclaimed historian. "What in blazes are you doing here?" Bill demanded, his voice steady. "Thought you might have some explaining to do, Harlan." Caught off guard, Harlan stammered, I was just what? Scaring folks away from this cave? Hiding your little secret?" Bill's eyes narrowed, and he stepped forward. "I reckon you thought you could keep this treasure all to yourself, huh?" Harlan's face flushed, the color draining as he realized his ruse had been exposed. "It was never meant to be taken seriously. The stories kept people away, and that's what I needed." Seems you didn't reckon on a curious cowboy and his dog sniffing out the truth. Bill pointed to the journal in his hand. This here's going to the sheriff, and I reckon you'll have plenty of time to think about your misdeeds while you're sitting in jail. With that, Harlan's bravado crumbled and he dropped to his knees, pleading for mercy. But Bill's heart was unyielding. You've caused enough trouble in this town, and it's time for justice to be served. As they made their way back to town, lantern light illuminating the path ahead, Bill felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The truth had been revealed, and the treasure would be returned to its rightful place in the community. Roger trotted happily beside him, his tail wagging with pride. Bill reached down to scratch his loyal friend behind the ears. You did good, partner. Couldn't have done it without you. With the rising sun casting a warm glow over the horizon, Bill knew that a new chapter awaited him. The town would heal, the stories would change, and perhaps, just perhaps, he could find peace at last in this rugged land he called home. Together, he and Roger would face whatever lay ahead, ready to carve their own legacy in the heart of the frontier.